If you've ever thought to yourself, I'd rather just read about this than actually do it, you're not alone. The Enneagram 5 newsletter exists to help you move from knowing to experiencing. Every Saturday, you'll get insights designed to help fives grow without overwhelm. Sign up for free today at enneagram5.com/newsletter or visit the link in the description. Now on to the show. Back again, here to talk about emotional intelligence, which is, we like the second half of that term.
Yes.
We do.
Maybe we can start with how each of us kind of define emotional intelligence.
That's a good question.
Sam, go first.
Yes. Okay. I guess over the years, I've sort of worked with this concept or adjacent concepts. And I would characterize it as the ability to discern emotions, both in oneself and others, accurately, and then respond to what those are.
Okay.
That's a succinct way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
You know, I've done a little bit of research just around the different types of intelligence because it was helpful for me to learn that there are different types of intelligence, and that is not just the intellect or the being in my head that makes me intelligent, but and it's obvious to other people, but I think that as fives, we tend to zero in on just a specific type of intelligence. And the way that I think about it is very similar to what you described. It's being aware enough of the emotions that are happening both externally and internally, and then being able to respond to them in a productive way, basically. When I say emotional intelligence, then what does that bring up for you?
I have these situations that happen, not as much anymore, but they used to happen a lot, where somebody would get emotional about something and I would be so annoyed that they were feeling emotion that was not pleasant to be around. And It was just like, you're being inconvenient right now. I need you to clean up your act and move on, right? Like, I'm not the person to come to for this. And for some weird reason, especially younger years when this feeling was the most potent in my life, was the time where everybody wanted to come to me with all their problems. And I was like, what did I do to deserve this hell? But then because of my frustration with whatever it is they were going through, and of course, I feel like as a 5, we have this ability to distill things down very quickly, right? And especially in real time sometimes. And you're around somebody talking to their problem, and you're like, I know what the problem is. I can hear it right now. And if you just do these 3 things, your life will be better. And they never listen. But they always come to you because you're so straightforward about the information. This is how you fix it. Oh, okay, cool. Then they go and do the same thing. And so, I don't know. I feel like emotional intelligence, that sounds emotionally dumb to me. So that's not intelligent emotionally, that reaction to people. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to think that I have grown and become more intelligent emotionally in my life. But I probably haven't.
A lot of people come to 5s for advice because we can maintain perspective very well, and we have, we don't get caught up emotionally.
Yeah.
But I think people learn not to come to us with just their emotions. They just want to cry it out. They go to a different friend.
Yeah. I hope so.
I'm curious, was there a moment when you realized that emotional intelligence was important in your life? When did you start to value emotional intelligence?
Okay, I feel like that's a different question. I'd say it was in my friendship with a 4. One of my very best friends from when I was young until now is a 4. And he'll be very happy to hear me talking positively about him on a podcast. But basically, they're extremely emotionally intelligent. I mean, they're one of the most emotionally intelligent types of the Enneagram, I'd say, along with 2s. And his ability to hold space for any feeling that anyone was having at any time it's so beautiful and admirable. Even though I'm not a super emotionally expressive person, yes, more so than other 5s, but less so than other people, when I would have feelings, he was just so amazing with them, like validating them for, and to the nth degree, and encouraging me to have them more. And I think that's what sort of started to clue me into it being a type of skillfulness that I don't possess, or I didn't at the time.
Yeah. Just so you know, it's all about that. Relationships with a 4.
Yeah. So being married to Amy, a 4, definitely is one of those times. Even before that, though, just internally, I think I realized the need for it when, growing up, I would have emotional outbursts and I didn't know what to do with them. And then I shamed myself for having them, which then just made them worse. and so I think I recognized the need, but I think that Amy's probably the first person in my life who modeled emotional intelligence for me. At least that I can remember. And she's so highly intelligent in many ways, but especially emotionally intelligent. She, as a true 4, is like you said, Sam, really great about holding space, and just she's highly intuitive and picks up on things that I'm like, how did you sense that? Like, I feel like I've grown a lot in that area over the years, and would consider myself, highly emotionally aware for a 5. But it just is nothing compared to being highly emotional aware as a 4.
That actually makes me think of a story I want to just say real quick about the same person I was just talking about, like my best friend. This was over text even. We were talking about something. I don't remember what it was anymore, but I said, it's all good, dude. And he said, I can tell you're upset because you called me dude. And I was upset, and he knew before me because of he read my texting patterns,
Oh yeah.
And it's mind blowing. It was so impressive.
I think has accelerated my growth in this area is that I can't hide my emotions from her. She picks up on the subtlest little clues, the subtlest little shifts in energy, and oftentimes, especially now as we've grown together as a couple, she will call them out. And she would check in with me. And it took me a long time to be okay with that because I feel very, very exposed.
Yeah.
It's a emotionally vulnerable state that I've had to learn to start to get comfortable with. But it also, in that, I see the value because she's that way, because things get brought to the surface and exposed, then we can work through them and they don't sit and fester the way they would if I was in a relationship with someone who wasn't emotionally intelligent.
It's funny, I've had the exact same experience, but from the other side, whereas Madison's a 6. So she's also hyper intuitive and always notices the tiniest little differences for me. The problem is that I think nowadays, especially, I do kind of wear my emotions more on my sleeve. I don't leave it ambiguous what I'm feeling about things. But the problem is I don't make that distinction of I don't distinguish the feelings. I can just be generally upset about or stressed out about something, and it seems like I'm upset or stressed with everyone around me because of just how absorbed I can get into it, and just trying to I don't know, create space in my own life for my own emotions. I feel like that's actually something that's a pretty big challenge for me because I don't know if it's my self-preservationist part. It's not comfortable dealing with feelings anyway, but it's also not comfortable feeling them in your body. Because your body feels anxiety is a very specific feeling that's physical. and uncomfortable. And that's how I acknowledged anxiety first, was being more self-aware about my body and how trying to be more aware of how my body would handle different situations and what that would feel like. And I was like, oh shit, I actually do have anxiety. But she's like that too, where it's like she'll pick up the tiniest little change, but hers is like anxious energy about why, whereas I assume Amy's probably not that way. I feel like anytime Amy has approached me with emotional questions, it's like from a very calm, like, but comfortable place, you know, and it's like just kind of leaning into the situation. Whereas like Madison is like same intention, but from a place of anxiety of like, what's going on? Are we okay? Like, are you okay? What's, you know, just kind of like wanting to check in. And she also is not, she's like the first to say something like before I even know that something's wrong. And then I have to be like, well, shit, I don't know what's wrong with me. I haven't really thought about it. I'm just irritated. And then I start processing it out loud. I'm like, oh, it's actually all these things. And somebody said this thing to me at work today or whatever. Like the last couple of weeks for my job have been absolute hell. And so like, it's been hard for me to just like keep a positive energy, and she's felt it a lot. And so but I always have to be like, okay, well, first of all, it has nothing to do with you. So let's just go from that place. Whatever I'm feeling, it literally has nothing to do with you. You didn't do anything. Like, I don't feel anything negative, and just like express that first. And then we can kind of dive into it from a place of like, where she's like, okay, it's like getting the, like, we need to talk text, you know, it's that kind of energy that I feel like she's probably like responding to from me. So like, I've had to learn to communicate more often about what I'm actually feeling. And it turns out it helps you process too. So
here's a fun question. Are all the other types on the Enneagram more emotionally intelligent than us?
Absolutely not.
Which ones are not?
I don't think eights are.
Or eights. Sevens or eights.
Okay, real. Threes, they actually are, but then they don't use it. So, you know, they're heart-centered but heart-suppressed. So they feel things and they're just like, oh, fuck that. I'm just going to forge ahead. Like I said, I think twos and fours are the most emotionally intelligent. I mean, there's nothing a four is more comfortable with than discussing emotions, which is probably why, like you said, Cody, Amy's really calm. And they're not very calm about everything, but they're very calm about feeling. And then a six is an attachment type, so they're really attuned to the other in terms of them feeling safe. So they are going to be like hyper aware of little changes, but they're going to, like you said, respond with anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. We have an example of, I think we probably all have an example of twos in our life, right? Like it's just a four is one thing. Like I love having a conversation about emotions. I love getting into like experience and what people are feeling in different experiences in their life. But then I think whereas fours have a deeper well to pull energy from for that conversation, my well feels much shallower. So like I have about an hour in me of serious conversation about emotions. And then after that, I need to not just recharge, but like I need to like zone out on something. Like I can no longer process information. It needs to be something that I'm just like not doing anything with. Yeah. And so that could be tough. Because sometimes the four is like right as the four is really getting into it, then I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the 4 or 5 dynamics that I see is like the 4 feels shut down quite often because they would want to do that always. Yeah. And 5 has to be like, no, we could do it for a little bit, but like I can't do this all the time. I don't know how you relate to that, Josiah.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a point of contention at various times in our marriage. I think that especially when I was younger, I had a lot of different issues, including like physically with my health, and I had really bad chronic fatigue, and so I had very little energy already. And so then trying to have a lengthy conversation about emotions, like there was no chance I was able to do that. Or if it did, it went really, really badly because I had very low tolerance and was, easily set off, and it just generally a disaster. And so I had to, part of my journey was first figuring out the health stuff and getting into a better place there, and then leaning into it more. It took a little while to start to see the benefit of those conversations. But once I saw how it opened things up for us, how it brought us closer, then I started to lean in a lot more. And now one of the things that Amy does, as much as she can, is prepare me for when we need to have a conversation that could be quite emotional. She's like, just so you know, I would like to talk to you about this evening, and this is the topic, and you can prepare yourself. And I'm like, okay, that's really helpful because I can, mentally preserve energy knowing that I'm going to need to use it in this conversation. And so we're obviously we don't have all of that figured out, but we've at least started to build some skills and find some techniques that work for us to make it work and make it productive.
Applause for her. That's amazing behavior. That's literally what I advise people to do who are partnered with a 5. Like, tell us in advance what it's going to be about, what time, how long, and then we can do it.
Yep.
I don't even think I need that much information. I just need to know it's not about me, if it is a talk, or if it is about me, and is it good or bad? And then I gauge my energy based on that information. Because if it's here's the thing, if it's a thing that's about somebody else or something else, like, it does not drain me the same way as if it's like a actual serious conversation that involves me and another person. It's like if it's a in between us one-on-one conversation, but if it's like somebody venting about their job, like if Madison comes to me, he's like just venting, like I need to let all this out about this, she'll be like, I need to get all this out and just vent about my job and these things. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready, go, And so it's like undivided attention. Now I know this is like something that's important. She like sets that instead of just like going into it, because if I'm, into my latest obsession or whatever the thing is that I'm not, my brain is not in the moment, and she just starts going into it, it's like, it hits me differently. It's a different kind of energy because it feels intrusive. And if that's anybody, that's a hard thing about work and jobs sometimes, is like if you work in an office or something and people just start talking to you about serious things, like then you have to, manage that accordingly with energy. And it's just a different feeling.
So I'm wondering if you can think of any examples where you have misread someone else's emotions and how that went.
I have a recent example of that. Actually, 2 recent examples, and they're both with 3s. So in both cases, I thought I misread the emotions as like contentedness, general happiness, joy, pleasure, like positive things. And they were like deeply unhappy and like insecure and confused with like the signals I was giving them, because I guess I was being too stoic and even keel and not enthusiastic enough. And 3s, they often need like a lot of over enthusiastic, like positive feedback, and I wasn't giving that. But they were acting what I thought was normal and happy. So I misread their cues as like, everything's good. And then luckily they spoke up. This is 2 different occasions, but like identical situation, and said like, do you have a problem with me? Like, what's wrong? Why don't you like me? Basically, why don't you like what's happening? And I was like, what? I'm fine with what's happening. I love what's happening. What are you talking about? And it was a complete misread by me and them of me. Like, they misread my my basic happy neutrality as negativity. So it was a misread on both ends. And then in both cases, they ended up thinking I like hated them or hated the project or, was like, didn't like what was going on. But I couldn't read the 3 subtle cues of displeasure properly. I just read them as neutral or positive. I still don't know how to do that, but that happened.
Yeah, it often happens kind of the opposite for me, where I get paranoid and just assume that they're like, people think negatively of me, and then I'll either get anxious about it or I will use it as an excuse to kind of write them off when they probably, like multiple examples of when that's happened where they either were neutral with me or positive. And I could not pick up on the proper cues.
I feel like I have different situations with different times. I think nines in my life are really hard for me to read and understand and relate to. And because I don't get the mentality of a 9 in any way, I don't relate to it. So I don't pick up cues. And I can think of a couple people that I know that are like 9 wing 1 or 1 wing 9 that in my life that are like, I literally have no idea how they're ever feeling. And they don't have the emotional capacity to tell you, because they just can't do it. And so it's like, it's a weird friendship to have with them, because I already, like, my base level emotion is nothing. Like, it's not happy, it's not sad, it's nothing. You know what I mean? Like, so and that's what I was thinking about when you were saying this, and Sam, when you were saying your story, like, what if all of our emotional baseline is nothing? Like, it's just neutral and no feeling at all. Then when somebody is feeling even a little bit negative, but they're not usually that way, we would interpret it as not negative, because they're at our baseline nothing.
Interesting theory.
Yeah, I recently started working with someone I'm pretty sure is an 8, and they're very, like, straight to the point, very forward, and I always said that that's what I want. And so I thought that, like, I would enjoy that, but for some reason I'm struggling with that a bit right now. because I mean, that's how I tend to be more of that way, or at least, like, I've learned to be less that way over time. But I have started to get really paranoid around, like, it feels like they're very dissatisfied with my work. Or with how I'm approaching something, but they're just, it's not that way at all. Like, they're just very, like, terse and to the point. And now I'm like, is this what it's been like for all of the people in my life? Without that, I've been like, now I'm starting to get a taste of that. And I'm like, oh, wow, I could see why many people thought I was an asshole. Like,
yep.
8s only say what's wrong with things. Like, they're just kind of oriented to pointing out the mistakes, and they don't do positive reinforcement because I think it's, like, patronizing. So just because that person only says what you could do better doesn't mean that they don't like you. And yes, that is how we come across to other people.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I try really hard to only be that way with people who deeply know me, and then like Josiah is one of the few people that I'm like, he gets my mostly unfiltered version. My parents are actually the people who get my most unfiltered version of me, like, completely. Anytime I talk to, when I need to really vent about something, or I really need to let my emotions out, I usually just call my mom, because she'll listen to it and take it, and she knows where it's coming from at this point. And we have an amazing relationship in that way, where we did not always have that, but it wasn't always the case that I felt better after talking to my parents, but when it comes to things like that, but they do get on to me sometimes and say, like, you really shouldn't ever say that out loud to anyone ever again. Like, make sure you don't say that to anyone, because it sounds like I just get, like, we all know. Sometimes our most unfiltered version of a thought is the most offensive and abrasive thing that could possibly be said about something, especially when it's insensitive on top of that, which is me most of the time. Something you said a minute ago, Josiah, that I was going to say was, it's funny the differences between you and I on this topic, and I'd be interested, Sam, if this is the same with you or not, but, like, when you're talking about how you start feeling anxiety about if somebody likes you or not, based on, like, what job, whatever the thing may be. And it's like, I just don't feel that ever, because, like, I only care about the opinions of those that I respect, and most of the time 8s are not typically someone I respect. So I don't ever get in that situation. Well, you know what I mean, though? Like, it's earned respect, not like general human respect, but like,
this is someone I respect. So yeah.
He's a social instinct. I mean, social instincts of every type feel that way. I mean, 5's less than most, but the social instinct is, where am I in the group? What, like, do I have a tribe? Do I have a community? How do they feel about me? So I don't feel that way at all. Actually, Josiah, I just go about my business, and then when someone doesn't like me, I'm really surprised.
Oh, must be nice.
I'm not surprised.
Nice.
I kind of assume that most people don't like me, but not in like a sad way. You know what I mean? Like, I think some people I win over and some people I rub the wrong way, and I'm okay with that. Like, I don't really care what people think of me, but that's probably also why I don't do well in jobs. I don't play the political game very well in that way, and I don't filter my emotions well in all situations. I think these days I do a lot better job of filtering depending on who I'm around and what's happening and like what context it's in. But there was definitely times where I was 100% fired because I didn't like what I had to say.
I think for me, it's the anxiety comes more around not knowing where I stand with someone.
Yeah, sure.
So like if someone doesn't like me, which I've experienced a lot, that doesn't really bother me most of the time. It's the not knowing, basically the uncertainty of if I'm playing the game correctly. You know, like if I'm making the right moves or not, and or like really like what the rules of the game are, I think is what it really is. It's like, what are the rules of the game? And then I can choose whether or not I want to play it. But if I don't know what the rules are, but I am expected to play it, then that just sends me spiraling.
Yeah, that's your social.
That's very social instinct of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say my self-preservation is, it has rules. I don't want to play.
And then sexual is more like, okay, is there one person here that I have a spark with? Okay, cool. I don't care about anyone else then.
Yeah. And I definitely feel that too. Like some of my favorite jobs are places where you have that one person that's like makes it all worth being there for because they're super fun to be around or whatever. I feel that in that. I don't know if that's how you meant it, but that's the way I took it. And then,
it is not how I meant it. I meant it in more like a chemical, attraction sense.
I mean, I do that. I mean that in some degree. I think in the same way, but I'm like making a situation bearable because you connect with something or someone that's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
I think is, yeah.
So maybe we want to rebrand this episode as emotional unintelligence because we are not discussing emotional intelligence because we don't seem to have it.
I mean, we have it to a degree.
We haven't landed the plane yet. We don't know. Yeah. We still got time.
Shifting gears here a little bit, I'm curious, especially Sam, from your perspective, where empathy fits in with emotional intelligence.
I think they're inextricable for sure. And the highest empathy types and highest empathy people seem to be also the most emotionally intelligent people. What's interesting is that emotionally intelligent doesn't mean, in my perspective, it doesn't mean like kind or good.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to, because I've seen the shadow side of this in people I work with and people I've known, where people use their emotional intelligence basically like for evil. Like they use it manipulatively. I think empathy is essential, but it seems like just because you have empathy doesn't make you a good person. It's like you can have empathy and emotional intelligence and know how other people are feeling and then use that against them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Which types are more likely to do that?
2s and 4s. Definitely. Just because they have those superpowers. I mean, they know their own feelings. You know those feelings wheels where it's like anger is one quadrant and sadness is one quadrant. And then within that, there's like 30 different shades of sadness. And I look at that and I'm like, I have no idea if I'm even sad, much less these 30 shades. A 2, in their sleep, they know which of the 30 shades they are and everyone around them. And with complete accuracy, and it's really impressive. But if they're less healthy, they will then use that to manipulate the situation. Like, I know how you feel. I know what you need. I'm going to make you indebted to me by, using what I know about your emotions to get, in a codependent relationship with you. It can get really ugly.
How do we stop that?
You look perturbed.
What are our defenses against the emotional terrorism?
Oh, you said it, not me. I don't know if there are any. Oftentimes you'll see 5s will just shut down to it. But I've seen 5s even get caught up. It's like you can get kind of gaslit. Like something 2s will do, specifically 2s, not 4s, will use their emotion of that moment to define factual situations. So like one day when they're feeling a certain positive emotion, they'll be like, sure, I'm happy to do this thing that you want. And then 2 days later, they're upset and resentful. And they're like, I never said I would do I would never do that. And they really believe it. And it's like their whole reality has to do with their emotions and can't be extricated from their emotions. And the 5 or whoever is with them ends up feeling crazy and gaslit. So I'm not sure what the defenses are, honestly.
I'm wondering, I mean, I guess the only thing I can think of is increasing our own emotional intelligence so that we can be more aware of first our own emotions, but then what's going on in the emotional landscape around us.
That's a good idea.
It's funny how often in my life I have tried to manufacture emotional intelligence without actually having it. Well, for example, like, you think about emotional intelligence being like, creating more empathy in different aspects and being able to, connect with people on an emotional level that may or may not relate to you. I don't know. I just feel like there's it creates a versatility in connection and conversation that we don't always naturally have, especially as 5s. And like, I can't tell you how many books I have read on body language because I have the desire, and I've always had the desire to be able to read a room and know like how to navigate that. And the idea of almost like someone using emotional intelligence against me personally kind of sounds like a fun time. Like it's because it's like, okay, so now we're playing emotional chess. This could be fun. Like, you know what I mean? Like it sounds interesting. And so I don't know, gaslighting's never fun, but people kind of like, it's almost like a dance of conversation where it's like, what are they trying to make me feel? What are they trying to do right now? But I feel like I've tried to, and many times in my life, try to like manifest an emotional intelligence, or at least appear emotionally intelligent, maybe even to myself, when there's always this void in the middle that I don't understand of whatever that thing is, whatever that situation, that feeling, where all of the actual things reside about that situation or that person. That's the part that it's like, oh, that's like a big blur on the scan, right? Just
So it's like you're intellectualizing emotional intelligence.
100%, yeah. And I think, I mean, maybe that's something worth bringing up and at least mentioning in that way, because like I'd say we probably have all done that at some point, maybe. Because it's
fake it till you make it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not all, I don't know if that's always terrible advice, but in certain situations, because I feel like I've never acted emotionally intelligent. You know what I mean? Like I tried to play a part of it and tried to fake it in that way. But I don't know. The more you learn about emotional intelligence, the more you realize what it is.
We also famously intellectualize our emotions as 5s. So we'll feel a little bit. And then we'll be like, I'm feeling this, and here's why, and here's a whole bunch of theories about it. And we go right from like a tiny little sliver of feeling right into our concepts and our narrative. And I think the work that's really good for guys to do, somatic therapy or whatever, where you really feel what that emotion feels like in your body without defining it and analyzing it.
That is hard.
Hate it.
Yeah. I started working with a coach this year, and he does that kind of stuff with me all the time. Like that's his main technique for me, is making me feel this stuff. And it's always, because I will automatically start intellectualizing it, and I'll start creating a narrative around it. And he's like, stop, you're just building a story right now. Close your eyes, breathe, feel your body. And then like basically what he has me do is find, tells me to feel the emotion, but then find where it is in my body and like place my hands on that.
Exactly.
And then like start these different visualizations techniques. And he'll often ask me like, what color is it? And just different stuff like that. And then we go through this process of me feeling it and then moving it through my body. And then often replacing it with a different emotion, and then amplifying that to the point where one time he had me do a warrior cry so loud that I lost my voice for a week.
Must have been an intense emotion.
Oh my God, it was super powerful. I had not felt like that before. And what that told me was that there is not just a whole range of emotions, but also just a whole like amplitude spectrum of emotional, like feeling emotions that I have cut myself off from or have not been able to sort of really tap into. Like feeling something that strongly, it seemed like it was impossible. Like I couldn't even conceptualize it. But there have been a few different moments in my life where I did experience such a strong emotion that it sort of broke me out of that model that I had built up of what it meant to feel things, and realizing, oh, I'm not actually feeling things, or at least I'm barely feeling things. And it's really easy for me then, it's really easy for me to unconsciously get back into that state. And oftentimes what ends up happening is if I'm not maintaining awareness of it, then something in life will come along to kind of wake me up again.
He sounds like a really good coach.
Yeah, he's a really good coach. All right. He's specifically an emotional intelligence coach.
Oh, there you go.
That's what he is trained in. Yeah.
So if a emotionally intelligent person, which in my experience is usually a feeling type on the Enneagram, like 2s, 3s, and 4s, if they say to you, how are you feeling? What do you say back?
Normally I say, I don't know. That's what I start with. Yeah.
I usually just say like, oh, I'm good, or I'm fine. And now, like having grown in this way, it bothers me when other people do that to me, because I'm like, well, that's not a feeling. If I work with like 1s or 6s, any non-feeling type, and I say like, how are you feeling? And they're like, I'm okay. Okay is not a feeling. But I definitely do that. And especially with, my 4 friend and other feeling types that I know, they'll ask you like 5 times a day. Like,
yeah.
Oh, how are you feeling? And like, good. Like, I don't know what to say. But if you ask them, you probably get 5 different answers throughout the day.
Yeah. And often they're asking because they want you to ask them as well.
Yeah. That's a big thing. 2s especially do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. With Amy, she does ask me that a lot. She's gotten pretty good about not pushing too much on that, and sort of sensing where I'm at. But normally my first response is, I don't know. Or something like stressed, or something like that. And before I would get really annoyed that she would ask me. And then, as like I talked about before, as I started to see the value of feeling my emotions and growing in emotional intelligence, I've started to really appreciate that she does this, because then it's an opportunity for me to stop and actually check in and try to do some exercises to figure out what am I actually feeling in this moment, or about this topic. And, half the time I still come up with, I don't know, but the other half of the time I usually come away with deeper understanding of what I'm feeling in the moment.
That's nice.
I think it's there's a difference too, with being, whether or not you can be your honest self with somebody when you're connecting on a higher emotional level. I say that because I think about times where I can think about with the same person, with the same friend who is particularly very on the feeling center, like very much, emotionally driven and loves to have long form conversations about that kind of thing. And there were times in my life where I didn't feel that I could be honest about how I felt, or about maybe their intentions behind digging into a conversation about emotions. And like, maybe this is a little different perspective of emotional intelligence. Like, I could feel that this was actually about them, but they were trying to dig in to me, and it was disingenuous. But if I can't call that out, then I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to be in that situation. And so like, it becomes much more draining. It becomes much more cumbersome. And I have more, I loathe it more than anything. And I think that there's been, especially maybe when we were younger, all of us, like when you're younger and you have friends who are also younger and less emotionally intelligent, that is the association that I have with conversations that are more emotionally driven, is like, or at least growing up I did. I always thought of them as those burden of a conversation, because like, what do they even try to get out of this? Like, I never felt like I was trying to be more known in those conversations. I just felt like it was about them. And they just, like you said, it's like if someone asks you how you're feeling because they want you to ask them. And those are the people I say I'm fine to. But I think that in my 30s, I've come back around to this, and maybe this is just also growing emotionally. But I find that I look forward to those conversations because they, especially as you get older, you don't have them as often. You don't see those people as often, right? And so, depending on who it is, if it's a person that I'm not going to respond as I'm fine, I'm good. But like somebody asks me and it's like, you know what, actually, I've had a really hard week at work and I'm super stressed right now. And I'm just feeling like a lot of weight and, emotional, like just anxiety. I'm all over the place. I would rather have that response, but it means that I'm also prepared to have an emotional conversation that I know is going to be productive. I know it's going to be helpful, whether it's just letting it out and them being a soundboard, or I trust their judgment or their perspective, or I want to hear their thoughts on it. Like, it's a very different connection for me, and is much more encouraging and promoting emotional intelligence in my own life, and me wanting to grow and me wanting to have those connections with people. But if I can't call them out on their bullshit when they're, it's being disingenuous, I don't want to have that conversation.
That makes sense.
I don't know what that has to do much with all of it, but that's just a thought that I had because I was thinking about different experiences with the same person like throughout my life, and it's vastly different now than it used to be.
Actually, would that count as emotional intelligence? Because the experience you described where you can tell someone is asking about you, but they don't really want to know, and how hurtful that is, that's like extremely triggering for fives. We can always tell that. Yeah. We have like a real radar for that. I feel like that's emotionally intelligent of us to be able to like read someone's intentions. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's a part of conversation we've gotten to yet, is like, what do we bring to the table naturally from emotional intelligence? Because obviously we're not unemotional or non-emotional people. We feel things. And I think, like you're saying, there are certain things that we probably do better than other things, and maybe more than other types in that way. Because for sure, I can always sense that it feels, it hurts. It's disingenuous. I have a lot of triggers about those kinds of things, though, for various reasons.
I feel like we have a pretty good radar for when people are trying to manipulate us emotionally.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we're impervious to it, obviously, but more often than not, I think we can pick up on that.
And I think another thing we do well is with other types that are like us. So that would just be other fives, maybe nines. We can read between the lines pretty well. For the folks that aren't, obviously super emotionally fluid or emotionally intelligent, when, at least me, like I've been in relationship with a lot of nines, like I can tell when they're hurting or when they're unhappy, and they carry it a lot like we do. They don't usually say it really outright, and they don't say their feelings very easily. And it's like, I think we can pick up on kind of like the underdog people, the underdog types, what they're feeling.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sam, what is some advice you would give a five who wants to increase their emotional intelligence?
I guess call that guy Josiah is working with.
Yeah, no kidding.
Seriously, work with a somatic therapist or someone like you described, Josiah, who holds us in our own body and makes us stay with the sensations of the emotions. Even as I'm saying this, I don't want to do it. I mean, we hate it. It's really hard work, but it increases emotional intelligence so much because we learn, what anger actually feels like in our body, temperature sensations, like heat, color, shape, like you were saying, Josiah, so that we can recognize it as it comes up and then know what to do with it. I think it's really helpful to work with someone who's well trained in those arenas.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, I think the first step is not just dismissing that kind of thing, because for a long time I was very skeptical of the sort of somatic work. Like what benefit am I getting from giving a color to something? That just seems so arbitrary, right? And then I do it and I'm like, oh my God, especially because when I went into it with an open mind, and I'm like, I trust the process, and if it ends up not doing anything for me, no harm, right? I might just feel a little bit silly about myself. But the experience of it was a very intuitive thing, where he asked me the question. I wasn't anticipating the question. And without even thinking, I was like, it's purple, and like, where did that come from? And I think that we tend to discount those aspects that aren't very intellectual, that are those more somatic, those more kind of body centered, emotional centered experiences. And so just the first step, I think, is being open to those different experiences, and knowing that there is a whole world out there that we're not necessarily participating in, and that there's a lot of value in that, of having those experiences. And so, like, let's not just throw it all out because we don't understand it yet.
You can get it also through art, through art therapy even, but through artistic expression, creative expression. And I'd be curious on Cody's perspective on this as an artist. But in art, you're just, and any creative process, you are bypassing your intellectualism most times. And that can really build emotional fluency also.
Creative sessions happen when I bypass the intellectual, because it doesn't mean it can't happen. I think when I try to intellectualize something like songwriting, I tend to, one, produce absolute shit, but two, I don't enjoy the process, and I end up psyching myself out thinking I'm not actually good enough. Like, I'll start building narratives around it, because you just let that inner narrative go. It usually turns negative if you let it talk long enough. So it's like, I'm like, well, maybe I'll never write a song again. Maybe I'm not good enough. And I found that last year, I've talked about this, I think, before on the show, but like last year I did the Febby Writers thing where you write a song a day. And every single time I have participated in that, it reminds me that there's always more there's always more to feel. There's always more to express. And that well doesn't run dry. We just like to pretend it does. And so, and I find that by removing that filter of intellectualism, I tend to, one, have a lot more fun, but then it becomes all about the possibilities are endless. And it ends up being the most therapeutic for me emotionally. And it also helps remind me that, like, sometimes it's good to do that in other areas of your life.
So once again, we've come back around to stop thinking, start doing, and let yourself feel. There we go. We've summed it up.
There it is.
Well said.
All right. Until next time.
Until next time.
Hey, it's Josiah, and I wanted to say thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you're the type of person who likes helping others, would you do us a favor and share it with other people like you? If you found value in this conversation, they will too. I also want to give a special thanks to our community members who shared their voice with us in this episode. If anything in this conversation has resonated with you, or if you have any further thoughts or questions, I want to invite you to join our community of other people like you and continue the conversation at Enneagram5.com.